So I ask permission from the Sangha and from the assembly of lay people to say a few words on Dhamma. And after giving talks for a few years, doing this for a few years, you would think it would get easier, but it doesn't. It's kind of like, I guess, kind of like Tudong. Like once you go Tudong once, then you plan your second Tudong, and then you think it's going to be easier, but then it's a completely new experience again. So that's kind of interesting that we just always want things to be easy. Why do we want things to be easy? It's like, okay, it's difficult now and I'll do this for a while, but in the future it'll be easier. There's like this hope that it's going to be easy at some point. But it's always just off in the future. Or maybe like now it's difficult, and it's like not very fun right now, but maybe it'll be more fun in the future. Or with this kind of like the grass is greener off in the future. During 2008 metta retreat that Lungpa Pasana was leading, there's a Q&A session, question and answer session each day. And I wasn't at the retreat, but I listened to the recordings of parts of it. And sometimes you gain insight into the perceptions people can develop about monks when you listen to some of these questions. So one of the questions was, what's the funnest part about being a monk? And so I loved the answer. It was, Lungpa started laughing hysterically. And he just kept laughing for quite some time. And then it's like, some time goes by, he's still laughing. So you can feel getting a bit uncomfortable, what's going on here? And then he finally kind of contained himself and said, it's not fun. So I thought that answer maybe encompassed it perfectly. So you could say maybe fulfilling, the Dhamma practice can be fulfilling. I guess we kind of have to know, like, what is Dhamma practice? So I've heard it said, like, I've read that Dhamma practice, one definition I liked, is that Dhamma practice is the modification of our behavior of body, speech, and mind to modify it from the unwholesome and into the wholesome. And also it's the reflection of Kamma, in Sanskrit karma. So in Pali we say Kamma. And it's also said in the suttas that only a Buddha knows the full range of Kamma, the full subtlety of cause and effect. Even an arhat can't see it in the way that a Buddha can see it. But the Buddha gives us basic guidelines to work with. So, like, for example, the Kamma of killing, he gives us basic guidelines, roughly what the result of that is going to be. but only a Buddha knows what the exact result is going to be in terms of how you did the killing and what your intention was exactly when you did the killing, and what you killed, whether it was a mosquito or a animal or a human being. So many factors come into play in terms of the exact way that you will receive the result of that kamma, your own level of virtue, your own level of practice, whether or not you've done it before, whether or not it's habitual, that all comes into play. But as a rough estimate, the Buddha said, killing leads to like a shortening of life, or a short life. If one is someone who kills, and then next life, if you happen to be reborn as a human being, you're reborn with a short lifespan. Stealing, you're reborn poor, and so on. These are rough estimates of kamma. But in terms of the actual way kamma plays out in every detail, only a Buddha can know that. So a lot of the Buddha's teachings on kamma, we just have to take them on faith. It's going to be very hard to see for ourselves. In its essence, kamma is cause and effect, and it's that the law that, it's a natural law that the effect is going to be related to the cause, and that the effect will come about once the seed is planted. That effect has to come about somehow. And how exactly it comes about is dependent on all these other factors, our level of virtue, our intention, etc. So the Buddha teaches this about kamma. And this is very important in terms of our Dhamma practice, this recollection of kamma, because in terms of the fixed law of the Dhamma, or the fixed law of kamma, which when we come to the practice we don't see it yet, and therefore we haven't modified our behavior of body, speech, and mind yet. So the fixed law of kamma would be that if an action of body, speech, or mind that we do is unwholesome, it can only ripen in suffering. That particular action can only ripen in suffering. It's impossible that it will ripen in happiness. This is a fixed law of kamma. If we perform an action by body, speech, or mind that's wholesome, that's skillful, the fixed law of kamma says the result has to be happiness. It's impossible that a result of suffering would result from a wholesome seed, a wholesome kamma. And the reason we don't see this is because there's a time lag. We're always receiving the results of other kamma that we planted in the past. So sometimes it might seem like if we do something unwholesome, we get some happiness from it. And yet, that's not the case. The actual result of that action is going to come back to us later. So that's why it's easy to get confused, easy to get perplexed, easy to get deluded. And that why, in the beginning, we have to take it on faith. So then the Buddha said that a stream enterer, one who's entered the stream of Dhamma, doesn't have doubt anymore. And this doubt is defined in a few different ways in the suttas. One way it's defined is one no longer has doubt in the true and right enlightenment of the Tathagata. But in other places it's described as one no longer has doubt as to what's wholesome and unwholesome. And that phrase actually is longer in some of the suttas that one is no longer perplexed about wholesome states. And that's why once one attains streametry, one has made it impossible then to be reborn in the lower realms in a future life as an animal, as a ghost, or as a hell being. Because one is no longer perplexed about wholesome and unwholesome states, it then becomes impossible for the mind to do something which would act as throwing Kamma into those lower realms at the time of death. So these are things we take on faith. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Of course, as we practice longer, it starts to make sense. So it's like we do this chanting, like Kamma Sakomi, Kamma Dayado, Kamma Yoni, Kamma Bandhu, Kamma Patisarano, and so on. So that's like, I'm the owner of my Kamma, heir to my Kamma, born of my Kamma, related to my Kamma, abide, supported by my Kamma, whatever Kamma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. And so that's the Buddha's summary of Kamma. Now, whatever Kamma I do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So any Kamma by body, speech, or mind which is unwholesome can only ripen in suffering as a result. That particular Kamma can only ripen in suffering as a result. If we think, may I be happy, may I be happy, may I be happy, it won't do anything. That's different Kamma. That will ripen independently of the first Kamma that will ripen in suffering. So no matter how much we wish, may I be happy, if we've committed the Kamma that ripens in suffering, then that's going to come back to us. It's like planting a poisonous seed and then hoping that we're going to get medicinal fruit out of it. It just can't be. We might plant a poisonous seed and then plant some medicinal plants around it so the Kamma is mixed. That poisonous seed still comes up as a poisonous plant. But maybe around it we have some other plants that we've planted as well, which are medicinal. So when we commit an action by body, speech, and mind, which is wholesome, it can only ripen in happiness. Even if we wish, may I suffer, I deserve suffering, I want to suffer more, that's not going to happen from that particular action. That action, because it was wholesome, has to ripen in happiness. That's the fixed rule. So the Buddha said then, when one reaches that point of entering the stream of Dhamma, you see it a bit more clearly. Why would you continue planting poisonous seeds? There might be a slip of mindfulness from time to time, but right away you're going to correct yourself. And the problem is, we don't know the seeds are poisonous. We haven't really investigated thoroughly yet. So this is important. Mindfulness, that's where mindfulness comes in. So we start to notice the results of our actions. That's the beginning. Sometimes it's like we have to go against our deeply rooted and ingrained habits and tendencies in order to plant some wholesome roots. So there might be like a sense of difficulty or going against the grain. Like Longpa Liam said when we were up at his kuti with him, he said, somebody asked a question about difficulties, and he said it's difficult because when you start practicing, it's like swimming upstream. But as you swim upstream and as you keep exercising your mindfulness and discernment, you get stronger. As time goes on, you get better at it. But there's a sense that we actually have to do it. To practice, we actually have to do something. Like we actually have to walk somewhere, we have to walk the path. So there's like this very strong sense of doing. Or the Buddha calling his teaching of Viryavada, which is the path of effort, path of energy. So like, in a sense, not being afraid to like pressure ourselves into being mindful or catch ourselves and remind ourselves to have like a sense of composure. And nobody's judging us for this. This isn't practicing out of like my teacher is going to judge me, or the Buddha is going to judge me, or the Krupa Ajahns are going to judge me. And nobody's judging us for this. The teaching is just, this is what leads to suffering. This is what leads to happiness. It's up to you. You can choose. So maybe it's not fun, but it's interesting. It's certainly interesting. Fulfilling, you could say it's fulfilling. And peace and happiness, I mean, I guess you can't call it fun, because fun is kind of like a sense of excitement. But it's great. So with Kamma, we can't really know the exact cause and the exact result, but we have these general guidelines. So we use our faith faculty to at least try and put it into practice, try and plant some wholesome roots. So what did the Buddha say is unwholesome? He said greed, hatred, and delusion. And again, this is a rough way of looking at it, just to divide it up in that way. What is wholesome? Non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And this gets into it's divided up further into the 10 unwholesome courses of action of body, speech, and mind, and the 10 wholesome courses of action of body, speech, and mind. And this has some overlap with the precepts, and one starts to see the reason for the precepts, because it's the precepts, the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, and so on. It's a way to lift ourselves up and out of suffering and create a certain threshold that we won't drop below. We need a certain level of happiness and well-being just to be able to see things clearly, just to be able to practice, just to have a place to stand and collect ourselves. If we hold the 5 precepts, not intentionally taking life, not taking what is not given, not committing sexual misconduct, not using false or harmful speech, not taking intoxicants, automatically that creates a floor or a threshold for us to stand on. And in a sense, that shuts off lower realms to us. We can't say we won't be reborn as an animal, a ghost, or a hell being, but in this lifetime, it shuts off lower realms of existence to us. If we don't intentionally take life, it automatically shuts off the whole realm of experience associated with the taking of life. If we don't take that which is not given, it shuts off that whole realm of experience associated with the results of taking what is not given. If we don't commit sexual misconduct, it shuts up the door on the whole realm of experience associated with that, and so on. So the precepts are really connected with Kamma. Actually, everything in the Buddha's teaching is all connected. Every paragraph of the Buddha's teaching leads into every other part of the Buddha's teaching. So if we just list the 10 unwholesome courses of action, that would be killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 3 for body: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 4 for speech, that's lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, idle chatter. These are classed as the 4 courses of unwholesome speech. 3 are mental. 1 is covetousness. 2 is harmful intent. 3 is wrong view. So that first one, covetousness, is connected with greed. Harmful intent is connected with hatred. Wrong view is connected with delusion. For the first 3 courses of unwholesome bodily action, of those 3, killing is the heaviest. Of the last 3, the 3 courses of mental action, the last is the heaviest. Wrong view, it's said, that is the heaviest. So I'll talk about a few of these. I can't quite remember exactly what the results are for each one. But it's like for killing, one achieves a shorter life. For stealing, one is poor. Sexual misconduct, one can never keep a partner. Lying, no one gives importance to the things that you say. Harsh speech, people are afraid of you. Divisive speech, one has no friends. Idle chatter, what you say has no meaning. Covetousness, one doesn't achieve one's aims. Harmful intent, one, in various ways, one comes to harm oneself. Wrong views, one is more confused and deluded. So these are like rough results of those categories so that we can reflect on. And it can be helpful to catch ourselves if we're doing any of these, and we can reestablish our mindfulness. So, okay, let's come back to the center and try to reestablish ourselves in planting wholesome roots rather than tending to our unwholesome roots. It's all going to be mixed together. And again, it's not even like judging ourselves, but it's coming back in such a way that, well, this is what we're here for. This is the practice. So those are basic results. Say if you were to have that Kamma of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so on, and one was to then be reborn as a human again in a future life, you have these general guidelines as to that's what the results of those things are. But then how much we get a result, or the heaviness or lightness of a certain unwholesome kamma, it might result in only a little bit of suffering, or it might result in a lot of suffering. So this is where whether it's habitual or not comes in. So if something is habitual, the Buddha said that it's heavier than to keep doing it. And this is also one of these little gems I found in the suttas at one point, where it kind of went against my preconceived idea of the way I thought things were, and the suttas say it differently. That's interesting. Was where the Buddha said that there's two ways you can do an unwholesome act. One is you don't know it's wrong, and it's habitual. You keep doing it. The other way is you know it's wrong, but you do it anyway. So the idea I always had, well, if you know it's wrong, you do it. That's way heavier. It's way heavier. But in the sutta I read, the Buddha said, which is worse? The action you commit that you don't know it's wrong, that's heavier, that's worse. That's worse than knowing it's wrong and doing it. Why is that? That's strange. It must have been some sort of scribal error or a change by the Brahmins in the 9th century, But then the Buddha goes on to explain, because if you don't know it's wrong, you'll keep doing it on into the future. If you know it's wrong, you might still do it, but eventually there's a chance that you'll stop doing that action because you know it's wrong. Eventually, eventually you'll have to weigh things and think, is it worth it? Is it worth it to keep doing it if I know it has a bad result? So the Buddha has the teachings about what's right and wrong. In our heart of hearts, maybe we don't believe the Buddha at first. But then as we start to internalize the practice, we memorize suttas, we learn the Dhamma, we start to see it a little bit for ourselves. We might still do some of these unwholesome actions, even though we've heard and read that they're incorrect, they're wrong, they lead to suffering. But eventually there's a chance we'll stop. But if we had wrong view and we didn't know that these actions lead to suffering, we're not going to stop. We're just going to keep doing it, keep following those same habit patterns. So that's interesting. That teaching had a strong effect on me. So then there's whether it's habitual or not. So if we kill and it's not habitual, that's one result. If we kill and it's habitual, that's another result. And the Buddha says that's heavier. If it's habitual, it's heavier. And some unwholesome kammas are light by their very nature, but they become heavy because we always do them. So idle chatter falls into that category. A very light unwholesome kamma, but then becomes heavy by virtue of constantly doing it. Or some, like covetousness, it's quite interesting. Covetousness is a mental act of desiring to own something that belongs to somebody else, or something that doesn't belong to us. Maybe it doesn't have an owner, but we want to own it. So when we direct our attention in a certain way of wanting to make something ours, it's very good to know what that is. And it's subtle. This is subtle stuff. It's said that we can even covet our own possessions, even things that are ours already. We can see them, and if we own something beautiful, for example, we can, want to hold on to it more. Harmful intent, that can be subtle as well. That can be seeing somebody succeed, for example, and having that subtle jealousy or that subtle maybe not even so conscious idea that, who do they think they are or whatever. It's important to use mindfulness to start to get to see these things if we want to uproot these wholesome seeds. And again, it's not out of a sense of judgment that we practice. I mean, I know just growing up in this society, it's all about judging. It's all about the judge in the court and the jury and getting sentenced, either innocent or guilty. So that's like ingrained in the society. So for myself, it's natural that I would see the Buddha as a judge. You made either good karma or bad karma, and he's deciding, but actually it's us who is deciding for ourselves out of a choice. Do we want suffering or happiness? So the Buddha, out of great compassion, has taught us, well, okay, I'll let you know, this is what I've realized for myself is these are the things that lead to suffering, these are the things that lead to happiness, and now it's up to you. So the Buddha's the Buddha. I mean, he could care less whether we follow his teaching or not, although he is moved by great compassion to try to find various ways, various skillful means to help us get out of suffering and attain happiness. So the wholesome courses of action, that's, of course, refraining from killing, refraining from stealing, refraining from sexual misconduct, truthfulness, gentle speech, speech that unifies those who are divided, and then speech connected with the teaching, connected with the goal, connected with dispassion, cessation, nibbana, connected with the arousing of energy, connected with the arousing of faith. Those are proper topics of discussion. Then the wholesome mental courses of action, that's the non-covetousness or a sense of renunciation, loving kindness and right view. Or use it, non-harmfulness and right view. So those courses of action can only lead to happiness. It can't be any other way. Those exact causes. So like the result that ripens from that exact cause will lead to happiness. But we may be receiving the results of other unwholesome kamma from the past while we're trying to plant those new wholesome causes. So this is why the practice gets difficult. It's like we've still got suffering from past unwholesome causes ripening in the moment while we're exerting ourselves to try to plant wholesome causes. And we've got past unwholesome habitual tendencies which are ripening in the present and affecting our ability to have wholesome habitual tendencies that we're trying to get going. So I think this is why it takes time. We can't just suddenly put a stop to the unwholesome, only take the wholesome, because that vipaka, that kamma from the past, is still going to be ripening over time as suffering, as various levels of suffering. But then as time goes on, as we start to develop the wholesome more, then suddenly we reach a point where we start receiving the results of the wholesome Kamma that we started to plant. And that can be quite encouraging. That can give us a sense of confidence and encouragement to keep going in that wholesome direction. So nobody wants to suffer, but it can just seem so kind of impossible to get out of it. We're so bound and stuck in our own Kamma, in the web of our own Kamma. So it's all mixed together, but then over time, as we plant more wholesome causes, then it gets really encouraging. We start to get some of the results of wholesome causes we've planted. We can keep generating those, making them more and more habitual. And that takes like mindfulness, energy, effort, discernment. And then the power and the level of our wholesome results is going to be dependent on the cause as well. So some of the most unwholesome Kamma you can create, the Buddha talked about the anantariya Kammas, the 5 anantariya Kammas, the heinous crimes, to kill one's mother, kill one's father, the killing of an arhat, shedding the blood of a Buddha. Apparently you can't kill a Buddha. Shedding the blood of a Buddha or creating a split in the Sangha. These are known as the 5 heinous crimes. So heavy that no matter how much good you do after that it ripens in a rebirth in hell. Once that seed is planted, it ripens in a rebirth in hell. There's nothing you can do about that. But wholesome Kamma planted after that, before and after that, is still going to ripen. But the Buddha is saying that those particular actions, that's how they ripen. So that's some of the heaviest Kamma one can do. Now there's the opposite to that. So the Buddha talking about good Kamma. The Kamma that ripens has to ripen as a divine or as a heavenly result. And the Buddha mentions the 4 jhanas create that type of Kamma. So the deep samadhi, the meditation practice, leads to that very, very heavy, good fruit of Kamma. So that's encouraging as well. I mean, for myself, I'm not skilled in meditation, but I have enough faith to think, well, if I practice my whole life and I don't get first jhana till I'm 80, that's better than not practicing and never getting it. So that's, sometimes you hear people talk like, I don't even have jhana yet, what's wrong? But, one, we don't even know what it is. So it's kind of strange to judge ourselves for not having it. Two, it's like, this is also dependent on Kamma. We have to plant the causes for it. Like Ajahn Naniko was talking about at tea time, how he was relating that something Luang Por was teaching just before he left was that it's not when I get my samadhi together, then I'll be happy. It's when I get my happiness together, then that's the cause for the samadhi. That's the order the Buddha taught it in. Happy mind is easily concentrated. So, and what does that happiness comes from? We can back up. What's the seed for that happiness? the sila, the precepts, non-remorse. So we actually practice it and it becomes clear. I don't have the happiness yet, I don't have the jhana yet. Well, how's your sila? Look at your sila, look at the seed, back up, take a look at that. What's the cause for good sila? That's hearing the true Dhamma. So why isn't my sila, why isn't it purified? Why isn't it? Well, maybe we haven't been listening during the Dhamma talks. Ajahn Pasano, hundreds, thousands of Dhamma talks. How much have we retained? How much have we listened to? How much have we actually followed and put into practice? The Buddha backs up again. What's the cause? What's the seed and the cause for hearing the true Dhamma? That's association with good friends. What's the cause for associating with good friends? That's a desire to cultivate a wholesome body, speech, and mind. So it's all laid out for us, all these seed causes for the happiness and the liberation that we seek. But it's just a matter of using the mindfulness to cut through the suffering that we might be presently experiencing based on past unwholesome causes. Cut through that, see right through that. Like Luang Por Liam says, you have to go right through the suffering, see right through the suffering, and then get to the work of planting the wholesome causes. That's what we're doing with the practice, the precepts, the meditation, the whole life in the monastery, the whole Dhamma life. That's what we're doing. We're farmers. We're farming virtue, planting the wholesome seeds of virtue to eventually reap the medicinal fruit of happiness and freedom from suffering. So that's probably enough to leave everybody with for this evening.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami. So this is the half moon observance, and people, if they wish, have the opportunity to